China dominates the global economy because it embraces what America fears most, real labor. While the West chases branding and financial bubbles, China built an entire empire on actual production. And now their rise exposes a fatal flaw in white capitalism's disdain for work. For centuries, white economic elites have structured society around avoiding labor, while extracting it from others. Enslaved Africans built the global South's wealth, while European aristocrats and plantation owners positioned themselves as gentlemen, a tradition that frames manual labor as racially inferior. After slavery, Jim Crow and other exploitative labor laws kept Black and immigrant workers in underpaid production roles, while white capitalists rebranded themselves as managers, investors, and entrepreneurs. The Industrial Revolution amplified this divide. White industrialists like Carnegie and Rockefeller glorified themselves as self-made, while their fortunes rested on child labor, immigrant sweatshops, and violent union suppression. By the late 20th century, America began offshoring its labor to China, not just for cheap wages, but because whiteness had fully divorced itself from the stigma of manual labor. U.S. executives justified this by labeling manufactured jobs as low skill, a racially coded term, while pouring money into marketing, financing, and branding, industries that produce nothing tangible but generate massive profits through psychological manipulation. Meanwhile, China weaponizes America's labor aversion. They built the world's most efficient manufacturing base, not just by making goods, but by mastering supply chains, infrastructure, and real productivity. Now China controls 80% of global solar paneling, 70% of lithium refining, 50% of shipbuilding, while the U.S. economy relies on inflating stock value, branding hollow luxuries, and predatory gig work. Now, what is the result? China's GDP has grown 40 times since 1990. U.S. wages stagnate as labor is devalued and jobs are replaced with hustle culture. America's infrastructure crumbles while China builds high-speed railways, smart cities, and AI-driven factories. White capitalism's contempt for labor has left America with a failing economy, one where finance bros are richer than engineers, influencers out-earn factory workers, and branding is valued over building. China's dominance proves that real power comes from production, not propaganda. The U.S. can either confront its racist labor hierarchy or reinvest in real work, or watch as the next century belongs to those who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty.
I mean, let's cut right through this. This is disgusting. It's shameful. It's inconsistent with the rule of law. And it's also inconsistent with who we say we are as a nation. And every American citizen, every inhabitant of this country should be offended by what this administration is doing. But beyond that, every citizen in this country ought to be afraid, because the reality is, if they are successful in doing this to immigrants, and now they're doing things against American citizens, as you talked about before, who criticized the president, it won't be too long. And the president himself has said he had no objections to taking convicted criminals and putting them in the same jail in El Salvador. There's a treadmill that we're potentially getting on here that could result in the erosion of rights for American citizens. Now, I'm not saying that's the only reason that we should be concerned about this. People who are in this country deserve the ability to go before courts and have courts make determinations about whether they can stay, whether they should leave, how they should be treated. And this administration wants to take upon itself, to the derogation of the ability of the courts and certainly of the legislative branch, the ability to decide everything. This is how you get authoritarianism. This is remarkably similar to kind of what happened in Europe in the 30s. It's consistent with what we saw happen in Hungary and in Turkey in later days over the course of the last 10, 15, 20 years. And that's not a path that this country wants to go down. And I want people to understand this. If you don't stand up and fight now, if you don't take a position now, it's going to be too late. We can't say we can wait just a little longer. No. The time is now to stand up and do all that we can to fight this administration. Now.
They don't want to bring back Kilmar Garcia, but the real reason is insane. They want to be able to deport anyone, citizens and non-citizens. Their whole thing is once you're out of the country, you're out of the jurisdiction of the courts. And then there's nothing they can do. So then, theoretically, anyone can be disappeared. Even if they make a mistake, you can't make me bring them back because they're not in our jurisdiction. It was Sonia Sotomayor, my favorite Supreme Court justice, who first pointed this out. She pointed out that the government's position is actually both citizens and non-citizens can be taken and deported, and once they're outside of the United States, then it is out of a judge's hands to be able to do anything about it. The Trump administration has made this argument over and over in court. It has never worked. One of the judges pointed out that we are paying El Salvador to take these people. Reuters found that we paid El Salvador $6 million to imprison 300 gang members. So if we have a problem with our service, perhaps we should try stopping payment. They don't want to bring him back because they want to be able to get rid of anybody they want.
So, this is terrifying. A group of military contractors led by Eric Prince, the guy behind Blackwater, just pitched a $25 billion plan to mass deport 12 million people before the 2026 midterms. They're proposing processing camps on military bases, a private fleet of planes, and even a small army of citizens to make arrests. This would mean deporting 500,000 people a month. That's a 600% increase from current levels. If that sounds illegal and dystopian, that's because it is. But they're trying to make it happen anyway. And guess who profits? Private contractors. The same people who cashed in on war now want to cash in on deportations. This isn't just cruel, it's dangerous. We know what happens when governments start rounding people up and putting them in camps. This needs to be called out now. Like and share and comment, please. People need to know this is happening.
Hey y'all, listen, have y'all seen the video of the young man who's the truck driver who had a conversation with an older white man at a restaurant, who the older white man basically confessed that when he was a firefighter back in the 60s and 70s, how him and his firefighter buddies used to let black people burn and listen to their screams and allow them to burn to death because of the 60s and 70s because they were black. Okay, I tagged him at the bottom. Go to his page, find the video, and take a listen. But listen, let me put this trigger warning out here. Everybody can't listen to this. So know your mindset and know your trigger level, okay, before you go listen to it. But anyway, once I listened to his video, it just brought me back to just a couple days ago. And I'm a true believer in things happen in threes. I don't know where I get it from, but I'm a true believer. Things happen in threes. So a few days ago, there were two patients in the waiting room. They were the last two patients of the day. One was a middle-aged white woman. The other was an older white woman. I would say she was probably in her 70s or 80s, right? And there was me. Me and the middle-aged white woman were having a conversation because she follows me on TikTok. I follow her. And we were talking about the whole washcloth thing. Age-old topic, right? So as me and her are talking, the middle-aged white woman goes, she goes, I don't get it. She said, I honestly think it's the South versus the North thing. She said, because me growing up in the South, in the Carolinas, she said, you can't come in my house without a washcloth. Now, you gonna use a washcloth to wash your butt. She says, I really think it's Northern white people who don't do it. So we just giggling amongst ourselves and we're talking. The older white lady looks at the younger white lady and looks at her kind of strange. And she goes, I'm sorry. She says, I'm confused. You use a washcloth? You bathe every day? So the younger white woman looks at her and goes, yes, ma'am. I bathe every day, sometimes 3 times a day. And yes, I grew up using a wash rag. The older white woman looks at the younger white woman and then looks at me. She goes, I can understand why she bathes every day, but I'm confused why you do. She says, honey, you're white. Your skin is pure. White skin is pure. We don't have to bathe every day because our skin is pure. Black people have to bathe daily because they don't know when they're dirty, and their skin is not pure as our skin. Wait, what? So the younger white woman looks at the older white woman and then looks at me, and she looks and says to the older white woman, she said, are you serious right now? She goes, I'm very serious. She said, when I was growing up back in the 40s, I was always told by my mama and my grandmama and my aunts and everybody in my family, white skin is pure. Black skin is not pure. If your skin is darker than my skin, you need to bathe every day because you have impurities in your skin. Black people don't know when they're dirty. So they have to bathe every day so they can be accepted by society. Now it's 2024. And this is her mindset. This is what she... And again, this is her mindset, and this is how she raised her children. Now, her children would be my age, 50, because I'm 54. She's close to my mama age. You understand? So if she raised her children like this, her children are raising their children like this. You get where I'm going? Okay. Let me tell you something. I've talked to a lot of people because of my profession. And I kid you not when I say this, and I do not say this to be ugly. It is more likely than it's not to find people with this mindset. It's more likely than not to find people with this mindset, to find people with the mindset of that 89-year-old man who dressed in the 60s and the 70s. I was born in 1970. That was only 54 years ago. You understand? It's more likely than not to find people with that mindset. Yeah. Let that sit in your head and marinate for about 10 minutes, and then we can come back and talk about it. All right, bye.
Where's the riot gear? Where are the tasers? Where are the shields? Have you noticed that the protests since the election have been remarkably void of any sort of military-ish looking occupation from the government? Have you noticed that? Notice that when we're not there, they don't bring in the level of violence that when we protest. Now, here's the thing that you need to comprehend. If you look at what they're doing now, okay, I call it poking the bear. They are trying with every ounce of blood in their bones to trigger us, to get in our feelings. So we gather and march. And if we did gather in March, that would give them permission to unleash martial law. Now, when you think about martial law, it's bigger than how when we protested for George Floyd. You see what I'm saying? But if you think about civil rights, and you think about the water hose, you think about the dogs, you think about the beatings, if you think about Jim Crow, if you think about sundown towns, if you think about Reconstruction, if you think about stealing black boys and put them on a chain gang, like if you think like that, if you think 1800s and early 1900s, that is what they want to do. But God is faithful. because we have been blessed with spiritual discernment and wisdom because we rested. We're not participating, so they can't do that. But if we did, that would give them permission to literally be extraordinarily violent toward us and have us be unalived for the sake of for something that is not ours to fight. Okay, so here's the good news. Hold your peace, baby. You're doing great. Keep on resting. Kicking your nails in. Keep watching. Keep an eye on things. But we're not engaging in this. This is not our fight. This is a white fight. Let them work it out among themselves, okay? That's not being passive, that's being wise, all right? Because this is not ours to take care of. I give this over to the hands of God and to the hands of white people who really can make a difference. It's not our fight. So do not feel compelled to defend or explain or get involved. Don't do it. They'll just use your body as a shield. They'll use your passion as their voice, and then they will silence you and throw you under the bus. It's historical. You can go all the way back, all the way through history and see it. So please know that you will not be used. You're a child of God. You are God wrapped in flesh. You're the head and not the tail. You're above and not beneath. You are the righteousness of God. Okay? I love you, sis. I love you, bro. Don't be used.
I really need y'all to stop and just listen for a second, especially Black people. So April 20th is significant for a couple of things. One is Jesus' birthday, the resurrection. 2, it's 420. Yay for me. 3, it's also the day Trump will invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807. Now, if you don't know what the Insurrection Act is, let me tell you what it is. It's an act that was passed in 1807 that gives the president the right to deploy American troops on American soil against Americans, with no checks and balances from the governors or the mayors of those cities. See, while we were crying about Trump getting in office on January 20th, he was in the back signing an executive order. Now, this executive order wanted to declare a state of emergency at the border, the southern border, which gave the Department of Defense and the Department of Homeland Security 90 days to get their shit together and to report back to Trump to let him know if it was okay to invoke the Insurrection Act. Now, let's think about it like this. Got J.D. Vance, who would do anything for Trump. Got Pete Hegseth. Baby, that's a hot mess. And all the other minions Trump has put in place to serve him. This act will go through. And if you're saying to yourself, man, this shit would never happen. Remember in 2020 when George Floyd was unalive and everybody took to the street? Trumpy wanted to invoke the Insurrection Act then. But he had everybody in office that told him no, he could not. You could not deploy the U.S. military on civilians. So instead, he got the goddamn National Guard to do. He pushed everybody out the way and took a damn photo op in front of a church. And he was really pissed off that he could not invoke that act. Now, I've seen several videos on this matter. They're all saying they're going to use the protests on April 5th as an excuse to invoke this act. They've also said that J.D. Vance and President Trump and everybody else has gone down there and did photo ops at the southern border for no reason. When the Insurrection Act is invoked, every city, every major city is going to be under attack. They will be able to arrest people. Yes, the military will be able to arrest them. Governors and mayors won't be able to say shit. The news stations will only be able to report what they are told to report. And civilians like us are going to be the main targets. Yes, Black people. The protests on April 5th were really peaceful. Why? Because there were no Black people leading the charge, especially Black women. But if this Insurrection Act is invoked, more than likely our people will be out in those streets. Because now we're living under a dictatorship. And the only thing we can do right now is making sure our representatives know what the fuck is going on. Asking CNN, MSNBC, Midas Touch, and everybody else to start reporting on this shit before it happens. We literally have less than 2 weeks before Trump tries to invoke this shit and may get away with it. That is basically martial law. And Trump has done everything he can to make sure this shit follows through. We need to be calling our local representatives. We need to be calling the news stations. We need to be making sure they're aware and they're reporting on this shit and not hiding under their goddamn tables. And Black people, we need to prepare to keep our head on the swivel. Because we know if we're outside, we are going to be enemy number one. And last but not least, guess what April 20th is? It's also Hitler's birthday. Kind of ironic, ain't it? We've got God, we've got Hitler, hell, we've got 420, and we have a dictatorship on the way. Make America great again.
I want us to be unbothered, but I do not want us to be unprepared. I want to give you 3 tips of how to prepare for what's coming up next in this storm. Number 1, I want you to stack your paper. Make as much money as you can. Do your side hustles, do whatever, save your money. Number 2, I want you to prepare your house. Make sure that your home has plenty of food, water, and protection. And you know what I mean by protection, okay? And number 3, keep your eyes open. If you think things are bad now, they're going to get worse. They are tired of our unbotheredness, and they're going to keep pushing the line. I want you guys to hold the line, stay unbothered, and be prepared.
Being a Black woman is knowing when the fight is not yours. It is letting America pay for her sins and transgressions. We will not save you this time. Tell me what you know about being disqualified for being overqualified. Knowing too much and might do the job too well. Code switching my tongue to standard English just to be micromanaged by someone who calls himself an ally. Feed me propaganda. Greet me with African-American vernacular they learned on TikTok. They say it's the new Gen Z lingo. They have no idea the origin of this breakdance language. We are living in a new era. The descendants of sharecroppers are now the new corporate baddies. Systemic racism, cowards, and envy hate to see all this prosperity on us, so they took back their affirmative action in the name of equality. Fine. Keep your DEI initiatives and programs. Haven't we been here before? I'm not shocked by your inherited ignorance, the colonization in your blood. I come from a lineage of women who marched with swollen feet and pregnant bellies, hunted by the smell of burning flesh in Jim Crow South. We are not new to this unsolicited grief against our bodies. When this truth fully dissolves in my skin, I am a protest waiting to happen at sunset. I know too much about riding at dawn for what you believe in. When copper skin is exalted until it becomes a threat, the vultures will come and try to confiscate our skin, our culture, our charm. Billy, they will give us a national holiday, but there is still strange fruit swinging. Every day we are fighting erasure with permanent ink, writing our stories in the skylines to never be forgotten. My people are here. We have always been here. For most Black women, we are somebody's lifeline. Tour guide to enlightenment, we are somebody's mother, mending deprived hearts, holding on to things that don't belong to us, standing on front lines for people who would never march for us, but despite what they say, what we conjure in our bellies is miraculous. Being a Black woman is holy. It is the remedy in our touch, the comfort in our laughter. It is finding sunlight in your teeth during the darkest hour in the day. It is the hunger of wanting to live in a world that doesn't love you back. It is trading your armor for roses and resting in all the glory she is made of.